One Chicago police officer has been shot and killed, and another is fighting for his life in critical condition.
America, on April 30th, 2026, the same day that Alphonso Talley was smiling and laughing through his detention hearing for killing Officer John Bartholomew, two things happened that same day at the same time. Bartholomew's family sat in that courthouse watching a man who murdered their husband. Their father acted like he was at a barbecue cookout. The judge sitting across from Talley told him to be quiet multiple times. The FOP president was absolutely furious outside, and somewhere in Chicago that same afternoon, a makeshift memorial was being built at Bartholomew's old parking spot at the 17th District. And the Illinois Accountability Commission, a government body created by Governor Pritzker, voted unanimously the day to send a criminal referral letters recommending prosecution of federal Border Patrol agents who were conducting immigration enforcement operations in Chicago. Brandon Johnson's Illinois doesn't have a crime problem. It has a priority problem. What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Let me walk you through exactly what happened at Swedish Hospital on April 26th, because the details on how this played out tell you everything about what we're dealing with here. Officers arrested Alphonso Talley earlier that same morning outside the Family Dollar store in Lincoln Square. He had robbed it with a crew on scooters. Apparently, he pistol whipped a 55-year-old woman employee multiple times, even after she handed him the money and the keys. She went to the hospital with a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and injuries serious enough to require surgery. GPS tracking on the stolen cash led officers straight to Alphonso Talley. After his arrest, Talley told officers that he swallowed drugs. That's the important part here in this story, and we'll come back around to that here in a minute. Officers transported him to Swedish Hospital for a CT scan. Inside the hospital, he was taken to an exam room. He asked to keep his pants on. He was given a gown. He asked for privacy to change. He was still in handcuffs, by the way, when an officer uncuffed him for the scan. Talley reached the foot of the bed. There was a gun under the blanket. He shot Officer John Bartholomew in the head. He shot his partner in the face.
The 2 male officers were shot inside Swedish Hospital in Lincoln Square around 11 this morning. The suspected gunman, a prisoner who was brought to the hospital for treatment, is now in police custody.
At this news conference, we learned more about these officers. The one who died was 38 years old and a 10-year veteran of CPD.
10 years on the force, you guys. 38 years old. He ran into those situations every single shift knowing the exact risk. He did not run away from risks. And the person he was handcuffed next to in that hospital room had 7 prior felony convictions, 4 active violent cases pending, a dead ankle monitor, and outstanding warrants. The system that was supposed to keep them apart failed every single step here. John Bartholomew leaves behind a 3-year-old daughter and 2 stepsons. His visitation is Thursday, May 7th at St. Andrew's Greek Orthodox Church in Chicago. His funeral is May 8th. His family asked for donations to the John Bartholomew Memorial Fund at the National Police Federal Credit Union. Now, guys, here's the detail that should end this conversation about whether this was avoidable tragedy or a foreseeable disaster here. When Talley told police officers he had swallowed drugs after his arrest, that was not improvised. Court documents have officially confirmed that Alphonso Talley pulled that exact same move during a prior arrest. He told officers that he swallowed drugs, then transported him to the hospital. No drugs were found. The same tactic, a documented prior use in his file.
And they said in court today that it was somewhere in the CT room where an officer uncuffed him. Talley was naked but had a blanket covering him, and then pulled out a gun and shot both Officer Bartholomew in the head and then the other officer in the face, who is now in critical condition in the hospital. So Talley is actually going to be back in court tomorrow. This is for a separate case where he's accused of violating the conditions of his release. There was a lot of criticism over electronic monitoring, which Talley was under at this one point. So
the quote-unquote swallowing drug story has been used before by Talley. Officers at the scene that morning transported a 7-time 7-time convicted felon with active robbery charges and outstanding warrants to the hospital based on a claim he had himself already proven false in a prior arrest. That information was in his records. Nobody flagged it. Nobody communicated it to the transporting officers. The system here, you guys, that was supposed to protect them failed before they ever walked through that hospital door. And then there's a question about the gun itself. The question nobody can answer.
Nobody knows that for real. Nobody knows what happened with that gun. Nobody knows if it was tucked in a fat fold or it was tucked inside his body. And I don't know that we'll ever have that answer because he's certainly not a believable character to explain where it was. But the reality is, if it was inside his body, no amount of searches would ever have found that without a full cavity search, which we do not do.
That is the FOP president, the man who represents the officers. He's not blaming one officer here. He's describing a gap in the entire system. If someone is determined and willing to hide a weapon in their own body, wherever that may be, the current search protocol won't find it. Every hospital transport in Chicago just became a different kind of risk calculation because of what happened on April 26th and because of what Illinois system kept doing before April 26th. Here's what should have been the lead of every story about this case, and unfortunately wasn't. Alfonso Talley is not an isolated failure here. He's a pattern. He is officially the 5th person in Chicago in 2026 alone charged with killing or trying to kill someone while on a felony pretrial release. Number 5, 5th. That means before Talley walked into the Swedish hospital, 4 other people in the same year, 2026, had already killed or attempted to kill people while wearing ankle monitors or free on bond. And since 2020, people on pretrial release have been charged with murdering 2 on-duty Chicago police officers, 1 on-duty Chicago firefighter, and trying to murder 30 more on-duty Chicago cops. John Bartholomew is the 2nd Chicago police officer killed by somebody on pretrial release since 2020.
7-time felon Alfonso Talley was on electronic monitoring when he failed to show up for court in March to face carjacking and armed robbery charges. A judge issued an arrest warrant, which was still pending when police say Talley shot and killed Chicago police officer John Bartholomew and wounded his partner at a hospital Saturday after being arrested for an armed robbery hours earlier.
The question is no longer if reform is needed, it's how many more tragedies need to happen before action is taken place. With just 4 weeks left in session, the time for conversation is over.
Outstanding warrants, missed curfew, dead ankle monitors, 4 pending violent felony cases. Absolutely none of those triggered an automatic arrest under the current law. Each of those violations goes through its own separate process. Alfonso Talley had to be actively found. Nobody went looking for him hard enough. And while nobody was looking hard enough, he was at the Family freaking Dollar with the scooter crew, pistol whipping cashiers. The bill Republicans filed would automatically revoke pretrial release the moment somebody on electric monitoring commits another felony. Automatic, underline. No judge required, no hearing, no discretion. The system catches you committing another crime, you go back to jail. The bill is sitting in Springfield right now. 4 weeks left in the session. Let's talk about Judge John Like, because Governor J.B. Pritzker, who signed the SAFE-T Act, we've talked about this plenty on this channel, publicly blamed Like for this, and Like has not responded to press inquiries. But what the court records show is specific. In December 2024, Alfonso stood before Judge Like facing 4 pending violent felony cases, okay? That means 4 separate criminal proceedings were active at the same time, including an armed carjacking of a woman and an armed robbery of a man in 2025. 4 violent charges simultaneously pending. Like acknowledged in open court that the cases were egregious and that some of the conduct may shock the conscious.
In December, Like allowed Talley 7 to 15 hours on some days to roam freely so he could go to college.
Electronic monitoring system is broken. It does not work. It is not keeping people safe.
Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke says her office did everything they could to keep Talley detained.
And then the judge signed paperwork anyways to give him a lax sentence where he can go to school. And now John Like is up for judicial retention in 2028. The question Republicans are asking is whether Cook County voters will remember April 26, 2026, when the ballots are in their hand. While Talley was in a courtroom laughing and families were building memorials, our favorite mayor, you guys, Brandon Mohawk Johnson, was on ABC 7 for a town hall. He was asked directly about Bartholomew's death. He was asked directly if the system is broken. Listen to how he answered.
Mayor, the suspect had more than half a dozen felonies in less than 10 years. He was supposed to be on electronic monitoring. Some aldermen said yesterday our system is broken because he was then out on the streets. Is our system broken?
Well, I don't think there's a debate around the penal system, the justice system, and its inability to really hold all of the complexity that exists within our society. I'll be the first to say, and I've always said, that our system is in constant need of reform. You know, again, what I'm going to do is focus on the things that I can control.
Constant need of reform is not the same as broken. Broken means something is not working. Broken means stop. Fix it, and don't let any other police officer die before you do. Consistent need for reform, at least in my opinion, is the kind of phrase that you use when you don't want to say that the system is broken, because saying that the system is broken means that you would have to explain why you haven't fixed it yet, Mayor Brandon Johnson. And here's what Johnson has actually been focused on.
I've used every single tool that's available to me to protect our immigrants and our undocumented community. The first executive order that I passed was to ensure that individuals, Chicagoans, actually know their rights, but also making sure that all of our city departments and sister agencies are working within the confines of the Welcoming City Ordinance that, as you all know, was passed by the first black mayor in the history of Chicago, Mayor Harold Washington. The second executive order was to make sure that we're protecting the right to protest.
4 executive orders protecting undocumented immigrants. 0 executive orders fixing the electronic monitoring system that freed Talley, a 7-time felon, to kill a freaking cop. 4 lawsuits against the federal government over immigration enforcement. 0 bills pushed to fix pretrial release systems that have produced 5 killings in 2026 alone. Those are priorities, not claims. Actual documented priorities. And you can count them. Now, here's a part of the story that I haven't seen covered side by side anywhere, and it's a part that tells you everything about what's actually happening in Illinois. On April 30th, 2026, the same day Alfonso Talley was smirking at a detention hearing, the Illinois Accountability Commission met in Chicago. The commission was created by Governor J.B. Pritzker last October, specifically to oversee federal immigration enforcement in the state. They voted unanimously, every single member, to send criminal referral letters to Cook County State Attorney recommending prosecution for the named federal Border Patrol agents. Not Alfonso Talley, not the judge who released him 5 times, not the electronic monitoring system that let his ankle monitor die without triggering arrest. Federal agents, you guys, doing immigration enforcement. These are the people that Illinois decided to go after on April 30th, 2026.
To hear the public defender have to argue on why we should let this individual out on our streets is despicable. It makes me want to throw up.
Letting violent offenders out over and over again to commit more violent crimes isn't creating less prisoners. It's creating more victims and more chaos.
And here's a specific irony that shouldn't be glossed over. The person who now has to decide whether to prosecute those federal agents is Cook County State Attorney. She's the same person who was publicly criticizing electronic monitoring systems that freed Talley. She called it broken on camera. This is what she said. She said her office did everything that they could to keep Talley detained. She is now being asked by Illinois Accountability Commission to file criminal charges against federal Border Patrol agents.
Officer Bartholomew would be alive today if his massively repeat offender of violent crime after violent crime were behind bars where he belonged.
Same desk, same official, 2 very different files. And Brandon Johnson's Illinois put both of them in front of her that very same day. 4 weeks left in the legislative session. Republicans have a bill ready. If it doesn't pass before the session ends, the next window is 6 months away. And based on the track record that Chicago has been keeping, 5 killings in 2026, 2 Chicago police officers murdered since 2020, 30 attempted murders of cops, 6 months. It's too long. America, here's the thing that doesn't appear on any coverage of this story and should be said very plainly. The Illinois Accountability Commission that voted to investigate federal Border Patrol agents on April 30th was created by executive order. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed it, the same Governor J.B. Pritzker who publicly blamed Judge Like for releasing Alfonso Talley. He blamed the judge. He also created the commission going after the agents who removed violent people from Illinois communities. Both things are true at the same time. And here's what's new. The commissioner's vote is a referral, not charges. O'Neill Burke has to actually decide whether to file. She has no deadline here. She can sit on it if she wants. She already called electronic monitoring broken. She's already tried to keep Talley locked up. What she does with the commissioner's referral will tell you a lot about what the Illinois governor actually believes in than any other press conference that any of them held this week. Officer John Bartholomew was a 10-year veteran. He has a 3-year-old daughter who's going to grow up hearing stories about how her father died. She was not in that courtroom on April 30th when Alfonso Talley was smiling. She doesn't know what smirking means yet. Talley is the 5th. Bartholomew is the 2nd cop killed this way since 2020. And the system that produced both of those numbers voted the same day to go after the agents removing the problem. Brandon Johnson's Chicago doesn't have a crime problem. It has a priority problem. And the whole country just watched it choose. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.